I think the more we can communicate and connect with each other and have conversations, I think that's better for everybody in the industry. I felt like Hemp Openspace could be that new platform that could really help, some great conversations and new connections within the industry.
That's Eric Steenstra, co-founder of VoteHemp, talking about Hemp Openspace, an exciting new collaborative and interactive hemp event taking place on December 8th. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I'll talk to Eric Steenstra about Hemp Openspace and what attendees can expect from the experience. We'll also talk about his work in the hemp industry, which goes back some 30 years. His work with VoteHemp was instrumental in getting hemp into the 2014 and 2018 Farm Bills. We'll talk about all that and more, including Delta 8, the FDA, and what we can expect to see in the 2022 Farm Bill. This episode is brought to you in part by IND Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, where their mission is to provide innovative agricultural products and services to connect American farmers with the pioneers and businesses that see hemp as a way to bring real and lasting change to our communities and planet. IND Hemp. All right, so my guest today is Eric Steenstra, whose work over the past 30 years has had a profound effect on the hemp industry. So when I saw the news come in about the Hemp Openspace event, I thought it would be a great opportunity to talk to Eric, not only about the Hemp Openspace event on December 8th, but also to talk to him about his work in the industry. He's done a lot of cool stuff, and I wanted to hear his thoughts on, where we're going. Also, a quick spoiler alert, Eric mentions a discount code that knocks like 30% off the registration fee for the Hemp Openspace event. So I'll have that discount code on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. All right, here we go. Eric Steenstra, co-founder of VoteHemp. You've been doing great work in the hemp space for decades now, and it is an absolute honor to have you on our podcast today. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I wonder if you could introduce yourself a little bit to sort of give listeners a sense of just how much of an OG you are in this space.
Yeah, well, I got into the hemp space in the early 90s. In 1993, I helped co-found a hemp clothing company called Ecolution with a guy named Steve D'Angelo, who is a DC-based, I knew him initially as a cannabis activist, and we met at a normal rally and became friends. And then he shared Jack Herer's book with me. And I had used cannabis, but didn't know much about hemp. And when he gave me Jack's book, I'm kind of, just read through it and I was just blown away. And we started talking and both agreed that, that this was something that needed to be, that we should look into opportunities and see what we could do. And, at that time, the industry was really, the opportunities that were out there were all around the fiber or the seed. And so we were both interested in clothing and fashion. And so we decided to pursue that and started this hemp clothing company called Ecolution. Ended up going into Eastern Europe, first into Hungary, and then later into Romania to source our raw materials and finished goods. And we developed a line of 100% hemp jeans, hemp shirts, a line of hats, some jewelry. We were selling hemp twine, and we even for a while were distributing quite a few of Adidas branded made hemp shoes. So
okay.
We were just all in on sort of on the fashion side of things, and we grew it to at that time everybody was opening hemp stores, and it wasn't the most sustainable concept because a hemp store alone wasn't enough to sustain a retail outlet. Well, I think eventually it shifted more to where we would see hemp clothing in eco-conscious boutiques and that kind of thing. But at that time, it was a pretty hot thing to do, and grew the company. And then ultimately in 1999, we decided to sell a variety of reasons, and Steve moved on out to California, and I continued on in hemp. But through that beginning with Ecolution, we got involved with the HIA. In fact, we were approached about attending the first organizational meeting for the HIA in Scottsdale, Arizona, in 1994, by a woman named Christy Bowling, who was the first executive director of the HIA. And so we went out to that meeting, and there were a lot of other, handful of. I mean, honestly, it was a pretty small industry at that time. There were probably maybe 50 companies or something that were there. Jack Hare was there, Chris Conrad, some of the early folks were there. And so I got involved. We became a founding member, and eventually I got onto the board, and just, really enjoyed working on that. And we talked about common issues and challenges that we were all facing, whether it would be, importing and the challenges of trying to source materials from, faraway countries, and to some of the misperceptions. I think sometimes people would market things as hemp that weren't really hemp. So we had some common interests, and through that, eventually realized that it was crazy that we were having to, to go outside the United States to buy all this stuff, and that
Right.
we really needed a way to push for legalization of hemp as a commercial crop for American farmers. And so that's how I kind of came around to, there was a group of some HIA members and a few others that came together to sort of form VoteHemp around that premise that we needed a political arm to go and push for policy changes. And boy, I could talk about VoteHemp. I mean, the VoteHemp was a 20-year journey, and our mission when we started it was to just bring back hemp as a commercial crop and basically to legalize it federally and in all 50 states. And, it's an amazing feeling. The 2014 Farm Bill was our first huge breakthrough, right?
Yep.
We worked our first, well, and, as I look back at the history, right, the first major step was in 2005. We got Representative Ron Paul to introduce legislation that was the first Industrial Hemp Farming Act. And we helped to draft that language. And I think one of the biggest things about that was the fact that it was a states' rights approach, which was Ron Paul was a libertarian-leaning Republican, and
Sure.
that was he wanted a very limited kind of approach and allowing states to have the right to do that. And it's interesting that was maintained. I'm proud of the fact that was maintained throughout the sort of history of the bill, and the final bill really allowed states and ultimately tribes to be able to regulate this as a crop. It's a little bit sad to see that a few of these states are giving up that right to the USDA, but in any case, so and then later in 2012, we were able to contact Ron Wyden through a supporter in Oregon who worked with him, and he became the first Senate sponsor of legislation. And then by 2013, when they were working on the Farm Bill, we had another big breakthrough with Representative Polis of Colorado, then Representative Polis, now the Governor Polis, but who introduced a piece of an amendment to the Farm Bill that would allow for university research on hemp. And the work that we had been doing, meeting with all these different, staff and members of Congress and educating them, finally came through, there, right? Because we ended up having just enough votes, really. We had 163 Republicans and 163 Democrats and 62 Republicans that came together and voted in favor of that amendment. It was just enough to pass by only a few votes.
Yeah.
But that showed the bipartisan nature of this, the fact that this was, and so that amendment getting into the House version of the bill then opened up a door for Senator McConnell,
industrial hemp,
who had just been sort of, enlightened about hemp. He hadn't been a hemp supporter for most of, the years that we were working on it.
Sure.
But James Comer, the agriculture commissioner then in Kentucky, had won a big race to become agriculture commissioner, running on bringing back hemp. And Connell saw that and said, okay, this is something that would be good for farmers. I can get behind this. And so ultimately he worked with when the House and the Senate passed two different versions of a bill, they'd come together and they worked on that to basically he came in and was able to make changes to that amendment that the Polis had passed in the House to broaden it, to allow agriculture commissioners to do research, and which ultimately allowed them to bring farmers in on it. So that was another big breakthrough. And then, of course, 2018 when we finally got the full legalization in the farm, in that farm bill, and now I think we've got all 50 states on board. So
Right.
it's been a wild ride, but it feels great that we achieved our goal.
Yeah. Congratulations on all of that. Have you ever gone golfing with Mitch McConnell?
I have not. I, I was not I mean, we were that's another thing I was pretty proud of is that we were a grassroots lobbying organization. So we weren't the group that was going to all the fundraisers and, writing big checks. We were literally doing it all through grassroots and education and through constituent pressure and that type of thing. There were some other groups that came in and probably did write some checks
Yeah.
to some of these guys, but that wasn't. I've met Mitch McConnell. In fact, I gave him a sort of a award, and really it was a copy of the legislation just to thank him for his work on it. Down in Kentucky, I got invited to do that, so I've met him a few times, but
Okay.
yeah, never played golf with him.
I figured I'd ask. I've asked a few other people that question, and no one has, as far as I mean, I'm sure people have, but nobody that I've talked to.
Yeah.
So we'll get into talking about the next farm bill here in a little bit, but one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to you today was to learn more about the Hemp Openspace event that's coming up on December 8th. Can you tell me, what that is, what the goals are, what people can expect to get out of it?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is an exciting new concept. There's a group that's been. I wasn't really familiar with the open space concept, but this is something that's been around for a while and for quite a few years, and it's been used by universities, by corporations, people like Google, and that type of thing. And essentially, it's a lot of the opportunities that we have to connect now, since COVID, right, where most of our connections have been virtual and not in person, right? They have some limitations to them. If you go to a webinar, it's kind of you're really just in a listening format. Sometimes you can ask some questions at the end, but it's not participatory. If you're on social media, it's asynchronous, and it's harder to connect and get things done. And so what open space does is it puts people into a space where they get to have a say in the agenda, and they get to be part of the conversation. And so instead of a thing where you're just going and listening to a presentation, you can come in and the goal was really to bring people together, to let people share ideas, solutions, things that, maybe that they're dealing with in their business or challenges that they're facing, and to try to crowdsource ideas and solutions from other people within the audience, in an open conversation format. And so I felt like, this was something that we could really use here in the industry. There are still, I think the more we can communicate and connect with each other and have conversations, I think that's better for everybody in the industry. So, I felt like Hemp Openspace could be that new platform that could really help, some great conversations and new connections within the industry.
Okay, so that's coming up on December 8th, and I think it's a 3-hour session. And
that's right.
Well,
it's a 2-hour session actually. So there's 2 hours, and then there's a sort of an optional after party that people can join if they want to, but it's 2 hours. And there is a cost to it, so it's $39, but we're actually offering a $15 discount right now for anybody who's interested in signing up. So that you can use a code which would be VoteHemp 1208. That's the date, and then so VoteHemp 1208 would be the code, and you can get $15 off, and it's at hempopenspace.com.
Okay, great. I'll put a link to that along with the discount code on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm looking forward to checking that out and seeing what's going on. I've never been to an open space event, but yeah, after years of Zoom calls, it might be nice to have something different, right?
Yeah, I think so. You've just been doing quite a bit of traveling around the country, if I read correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, this summer I wanted to investigate the fiber and grain supply chain, And that turned into a 6-week RV trip with my family from East Coast through Kentucky, the Midwest, out to Colorado, up to the Northwest,
Oh, that's
Montana.
great.
So yeah, it was, I think if I had to do it again, I would do it very differently, but it was a great experience, and we met so many great people on the road, and got to see firsthand, the people who are bringing this industry up and making it happen, because you never get to see an industry like grow out of nothing, right? So it's exciting.
Yeah, it's not every day that this something like this, especially this with this incredible potential that
Hmm.
that hemp has, with so many different types of products and everything, and it's an exciting time for you to be doing that because there are a lot of people that are really starting new businesses and investing into the infrastructure.
Hmm.
I mean, let's face it, we didn't grow hemp here for more than 70 years.
Right.
And all that infrastructure, the genetics, all that was lost.
The knowledge base, what to
The
do.
knowledge
Yeah.
base. Yep. And so it's we're just in the process of trying to bring it back. And it's almost like it's a new, even though it's probably the oldest cultivated plant on the
Right.
planet, it's completely new thing here as people are, jumping back into it now after all these years. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a farmer, I'm not a business person, but I'm a journalist and a storyteller. So I figure what I can do here is help tell the story. So this summer I wanted to see everything with my own eyes, and it's been a fantastic journey for me, professionally, since we started doing this podcast. But it's really like the people in this hemp space. It's like they're just so inspiring.
that's great that you're out there doing that, and I agree that that's a critical role as the storytelling and so yeah, thanks for being on top of that.
Yeah. Well, so my next question was to ask you about VoteHemp, but I think you covered that in sort of your backstory. Unless there's anything else you want to add about VoteHemp.
No, it's just I think we covered it pretty well. Again, just really a grassroots effort, but we've largely achieved what we set out to accomplish. So we're kind of in the process of of winding it down really. So
Oh, okay.
yeah.
How involved are you, or is VoteHemp, with the work going into the 2022 Farm Bill?
We've been involved in advocating on a couple of things, but I would say we're not. Vote Hemp as an organization no longer sort of has the funding and the sort of infrastructure that we once had. One of our main funders, who's just amazing, and I should give a shout out to them, is Dr. Bronner's, or David Bronner, and who's on our board, and Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps, who gave very generously to Vote Hemp for a number of years and supported us. And they've done a number of other great things. So once the farm bill passed and we kind of got through that, they set some new priorities, and they're working on psychedelics, and they're working on regenerative farming and a number of other issues that are important to them. So I think with Vote Hemp, I think we kind of saw it as not something that was going to last forever. It was something that was going to, try to accomplish a particular goal. And
Right.
once we reached that point, I think then,
Yeah.
a lot of us, it was honestly, if I had known at the beginning it was going to take as long, as many years as it did, I don't know if we would have started it, but it's kind of nice to move into some new challenges now. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well,
but to answer a little bit, answer your question really fast, is just
sure.
one of the main priorities that we're working on is expanding the definition to 1% THC.
Yeah.
We're seeing that farmers are being hurt by this current definition, and that it doesn't make sense to have hemp be defined as low as it is. We tried to get a higher definition in the original farm bill. Even had a one bill that was introduced that included a 0.6 for research purposes, but ultimately at the time the people that were pushing the bills, including Senator McConnell's office, they weren't ready to go that far. So I think now we can achieve that in the next farm bill.
Right.
And I know another piece that people are working on is trying to get reasonable regulations around cannabinoids and extracts from hemp. And that's been a frustrating piece with the FDA just sort of really failing to regulate and step up, and creating a lot of confusion in the market.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would like to see sort of the whole industry kind of split, so you could have your fiber and grain over here and all of your cannabinoid stuff on the other side. So I don't know if if we'll see that, but
I mean, I think you're gonna see some efforts, like for example, what New York State did, right?
right.
They're moving cannabinoids under the sort of same regulatory scheme as what they're doing for cannabis largely, right?
Hmm.
And I think that really those types of products typically are going to get regulated in that same kind of a way. And we saw some of this same thing happening in California. I've been also on the board of the California Hemp Council. We've been pushing for. We just got a huge landmark bill passed this year, AB 45, that opened up really this market with regards to how cannabinoids can be sold. There's still a few things that need to be resolved, but we had to work with the cannabis industry on that. And I think there's a lot of people on the cannabis industry side of the equation that want to see, they maybe don't have a problem with hemp and it's sort of at the basic level, but they want to see a more level playing field.
Sure.
And they're being taxed at these really high levels, and they have all these restrictions on them as to how they have to test and label their product. And then hemp was being sold without those restrictions. Frankly, I'd like to see cannabis move closer to where hemp is, and just have really more minimal regulations as to what we need to sort of ensure high quality product, making sure that these things are produced in a GMP facility, that they are properly labeled. Those are things that we need for consumers. But I think in some places the taxation scheme has gotten excessive.
Yeah. You want to weigh in on the Delta 8, Delta 10 situation?
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at that pretty carefully. And I mean, in general, I was against any kind of synthesized sort of cannabinoids when they, especially that didn't even come from the plant. There were people that were talking about this synbio, taking yeast and generating cannabinoids out of thin air, or lab-based cannabinoids, that kind of thing. To me, I got here because of hemp, cannabis, the plant, and I'm only interested in that. And then as a consumer, I just look at it from like I'm really interested in things that are natural and have a sort of good basis in health. So with regards to anything that's synthesized, I guess there's just, I'd much rather take, a natural hemp derivative, right?
Sure.
Something and I realize that some small amounts of Delta 8 are contained in the plant, but I think these synthesized versions, there's some questions about that. So I'm really,
safety questions.
It's not for me, but yeah, I'm really much more of a fan of seeing us utilizing the plant and figuring out how we can, use the plant in a good way, organic cultivation and natural production and that kind of thing. So as much as we can, that's where I stand on it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. To me, it's like the whole Delta 8 thing sort of happened because of, the poor regulation, right? Like there was just this loophole that they were able to exploit. And I personally think it's dangerous from a, consumer safety point of view. Who's making this stuff? How are they doing it? There's no oversight, and it's
right. That's it. You don't know as a consumer if you buy
right.
one of these products, you don't quite know. And I think that's a concern, and that largely falls on the FDA and their sort of failure to step in and enforce even minimal basic standards as far as these products are concerned. But I think also maybe it's actually more a result of prohibition. If cannabis were legal, across the board, why would we need Delta 8 when you could go and buy Delta 9 or whatever? So I think that we have to really. I mean, it's pretty clear we're ending up in that. Eventually, we're going to see it, federally legalized and regulated, and so that's where I think it should be. It doesn't make prohibition has been a failed policy for a long time, and I think it's it's time to figure out how to regulate it and make sure that products are out there are safe.
Amen to that. When the whole CBD boom that happened, I mean, especially here in Pennsylvania, everybody got into it in 2019, and there was just this glut of product. So to me, it's not surprising that stuff is just being, like the farmers are sitting on this stuff and they want to make some money from it because they have to survive. So I think we're seeing that, the CBD stuff move over to black or gray markets, turning into Delta 8. And I don't blame the farmers for that, but I just think the whole thing needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I mean, the farmers aren't, for the most part, aren't the ones making Delta 8, right? They're just making, they're growing
They're
hemp
just
and
supplying.
then trying to
Yeah.
find a marketplace for it. And, the unfortunate thing, because this is, hemp isn't really a commodity yet. And we went from, in 2018, we had about 3,500 licenses across the US. 2019, we had over 19,000 licenses. So
Yeah.
you just had so much demand, so many people that wanted to get into the marketplace that saw an opportunity, but they didn't. So many people jumped in without any idea where they were going to sell it,
Oh,
right? They didn't
sure.
have
Yep.
a contract, and so we try to really encourage people to take a more cautious view on this. If you want to grow a little hemp to learn how to grow it, great, grow it, half an acre, and don't bet the farm on it. But if you're going to grow it and you're hoping to sell it, you should do your research and you should have an idea where you're going to be able to sell it. Make sure you're growing what the market wants and that kind of thing. And I think that's not what happened in many cases. And sadly, quite a few people,
They got burnt.
weren't
Yeah.
successful. Yeah.
Yeah. Getting back to Dr. Bronner's. So first of all, that's my soap. That's what I use. And it's
Awesome.
interesting to hear you say that they are starting to get into regenerative ag and sort of getting I don't know, to tell a larger story. I'm finding something similar here with our podcast. I've been focused on hemp for about 3 years now, and this next year I'm going to expand it, and because we need to talk about the regenerative ag and these farming practices that will help ensure that hemp, is as carbon, negative or neutral as it can be. So I have not reached out to Dr. Bronner's yet, but I would like to talk to them at some point.
Well, yeah, I'd be happy to connect you. I think it'd be a good idea to reach out. Maybe you could, get an interview with them. I would also mention to you, since you're in Pennsylvania, the Rodale Institute,
Oh, I
who's
know
right
them well.
in your
Yeah.
backyard. And
Yep.
Dr. Bronner's has sponsored research there specifically on regenerative agriculture, but also specifically on hemp.
Right.
And so they've been a big supporter of that through Rodale's work. And so, I mean, there's another place you could also dig into that topic. And, you know,
Yeah.
we actually did a Hemp History Week event. We had started this great annual campaign called Hemp History Week,
Yep.
and did that one year at Rodale's farm. We had so one every year we went somewhere to do a big celebration, and that year we chose Rodale, and it was just an amazing facility, and to see the work they were doing. It was the first year that they were growing hemp. So
2017. Yeah, that was where I first saw my first stand of hemp was there.
Oh,
And
great. Well, then
yeah,
if you were there, yeah, great. Okay,
I
fantastic.
wasn't there at the Hemp History Week, but I was
Okay, you
there
were just at Rodale.
for
Gotcha.
a field day.
Yep.
I went to cover another event they were having, and I ended up talking to Ross Duffield. He was the farm manager
Yep.
then,
Yep.
and yeah, I'm standing next to like 4 acres of hemp. It's like 8 feet tall, and I just I too read the Jack Herer book back in the '90s, and so all of
Mhm.
that was in there somewhere. But then
Yeah.
I just had this vision. I'm like, oh, here it's happening, So that's what sort of lit the fire under me to eventually start this podcast. And also, I worked for the Rodale Publishing Company for Organic Gardening magazine, so I was already familiar with the Rodale Institute. But yeah, the work they're doing there, in hemp and in regenerative agriculture in general, is just fantastic, and we are so lucky to have them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, so any advice on how to bring the message of hemp to a larger audience? It always feels to me like in the hemp space, it's like the hemp evangelists are preaching to the hemp choir. But I'm thinking now, like, that the climate crisis is getting a lot more attention with COP26. Like, is hemp going to have a bigger moment, or how can we bring the message of hemp to consumers? Because we need consumers to demand that their products are made out of hemp.
Yeah, I think that, the best way for consumers to learn about hemp, right, is through some of these, different products and applications out there. And so, and a lot of it can be through earned media. Over the years, VoteHemp had a lot of success in getting, a lot of articles. We would do interviews with a lot of different publications out there because people were interested in this, and they would be, for example, I recently saw that there was a hemp home project in Pennsylvania, and there
Yeah.
was a number of
Yep.
media outlets that picked up on that, right? And so consumers are going to see that and go, oh, wow, I didn't know you could, build a house out of hemp. What is that? How does that work? And hopefully the educational components of it, the beneficial, aspects of the plant, the fact that you can capture carbon, using that, and that it's a healthier house, and that it, resists mold, and, is, fire resistant, all that, those would
Yep.
get through in those kinds of education. People would, maybe take a fresh interest, because I think historically, I remember in 1994, we went to, Ecolution, went to Woodstock, the 25th anniversary in Saugerties, New
Right.
York, to
Right.
go. They had a vending booth, right? And I remember people coming up to us, and 9 out of 10 people would be like, "What's hemp? Can you smoke it?" They didn't get it at all, right? Now there's still some of that out there, but I think that's changed a lot, right? We've seen so many of these hemp products. People are taking CBD, or they've had a hemp shirt, or they've eaten a hemp granola, or drink hemp milk, or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
More and more consumers are being exposed to these products and seeing the benefits of it. So I think ultimately that's probably the thing that gets people, maybe interested in seeing, and finding out more about hemp. But we certainly can always use more educational efforts, and your podcast is a great way to introduce people to this topic too. So
Does the marijuana stigma matter anymore?
I mean, it does matter to some people. Some people still allow that to impact their, sort of way that the way they approach cannabis, right? That they've had a hard time overcoming that stigma, and or seeing that cannabis is really not a bad plant, and that even though it has cannabinoids and has the potential to have intoxicating effect, or psychoactive effects, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad plant. In fact, the exact opposite.
Yeah, quite the other. Otherwise, yeah.
Exact opposite, right? So yeah, if you look back at how it was demonized in the 30s, and it was a pretty much 100% BS, and so there was all these stories, and they weren't true at all, and you see how cannabinoids can be used therapeutically, to help people. It's amazing, the applications, really. So I mean, as we've seen with hemp, but also medical cannabis, people are figuring out now how to use CBD and other cannabinoids, including delta 9 THC, in very positive ways. So I think we've had to re-educate people about this, and some of the stigma. Some people, it's hard to overcome it when you've been taught something for so long, and
Sure.
always thought something. It's hard to sort of take a fresh look at it.
Yeah. I mean, the war on drugs absolutely manufactured by the Nixon administration so they could, score political points. They could put hippies and black people in jail. And yeah, they fundamentally changed society in not a good way.
Nixon hated the counterculture, no question, and that was one of his big tools. Like you said, was demonizing cannabis, and making it illegal. After the controlled. Interesting. We were working in Congress, right there. There's a few of the older guys that have been there a long time, and I actually looked up the Controlled Substances Act and the vote. There was only a handful of members that voted against it, but one of them was a guy named John Conyers, and he was still in Congress at the time, representing Michigan. And I thought that was pretty amazing that he was one of the few that actually saw that this was a bad idea. But I guess where I was really going was that after originally they just said we're going to place cannabis in Schedule 1 temporarily because we don't know where it belongs. And then they had this thing called the Schaefer Commission, and they were supposed to, sort of make recommendations, which they did do. And they essentially said, hey, this doesn't belong here in Schedule 1. Well, the government never acted on it. Congress did not, go and update that. And the DEA, kind of had it locked in, they were happy to keep it controlled there. That's another interesting thing we had with, I guess a combination of VoteHemp and HIA was fighting the DEA in 2001 when they tried to ban, any consumable product that contained any THC in it. And, which would have shut down the hemp foods industry, or did temporarily. Actually, people were pulling it off the shelf. And we were successful in getting an injunction, and then ultimately overturning that rule back then in a case called HIA versus DEA. So it was, it's been a long fight, man.
Yeah. What other issues are you focusing on these days? Like what's that thing that we're all going to be talking about in 2022?
2022. Well, I'm hopeful that, I mean, I'm sad to say that it's not that the FDA is going to finally start regulating, this in a good way, because they just spoke at a conference in DC this week, and essentially it's the status quo. We're almost 3 years since they had a hearing about this, right? And they've done nothing. I mean, they almost nothing. There's just like they're not. I don't get it. I
They're
mean,
not even trying.
in theory, FDA is supposed to be there to be benefit to consumers, right? And in reality, what I've learned is that the FDA is more there to protect drug company profits.
Bingo.
They're more worried about PW Pharmaceuticals, who makes a cannabis drug, which is that's great. That drug is helpful for people, but they viewed it as that all other uses of CBD should be banned because this company has made a drug. And I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. This is such a beneficial compound, and it's a natural plant extract right here. So, the FDA, I don't know if that's how it was originally envisioned, but it's certainly gotten off track in how it's regulating, and it's not out for consumers' best interest. And that's evidence of the fact that you see all these products that clearly are not meeting the sort of basic standards you would expect for a supplement or a food. They're not, maybe not produced in a GMP facility. The labeling's not accurate. You don't know if they've been tested, whatever. When you see those kinds of things on the market, I keep thinking, why isn't FDA, doing something about that? Why aren't they regulating this market instead of trying to find ways to block, the sale of hemp, products?
And you think they're just captured by by big pharma?
I think absolutely. I think that's what they see their primary role as, working with big pharma, and the only products that they're interested in are products that have gone through hundreds of millions of dollars worth of, studies and research. And in some cases, if you're talking about a pharmaceutical, that's appropriate. But when it comes to a natural plant extract like this, there's no evidence this has been used. I mean, they even said, well, these products didn't exist before, GW put their application in. What are they talking about? Hemp extracts, cannabis extracts, and hemp extracts were sold in tinctures and bottles. And
right.
They didn't say CBD on them because they hadn't identified these different
these compounds. Yeah.
But people understood that cannabis extracts had benefits long before, and they were being used for that purpose more than 100 years before anybody tried to do this from a pharmaceutical company. So to me, that says it all right there. This is not something that should be kept exclusively for pharmaceutical companies.
Amen to that. Yeah, and then the whole thing about hemp grain as a livestock feed. It's so crazy that you can feed hemp seed to your baby, but not to your herd of cattle. That's just insane. And once those legal hurdles are out of the way, it's gonna be so good for many industries, livestock, farmers, everybody.
It's another great point, Eric. Right? You look at it, and this is FDA's involved in this, and also this private organization, AFCO, or American Association of Feed Control Officers. The fact that somebody's done the work to show that hemp is grass, or generally recognized as safe, sort of the gold standard for food for humans, but it has to go through a whole different set of studies to be in animals that humans would consume, is kind of that's a real head shaker. And so that's frustrating, and it's those are the kinds of things that are holding this industry back unnecessarily.
Yep. There's a lot of smart people who are working on these things.
I know.
Yeah. So all right, what else should I ask you about?
Well, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground. Like I said, I think maybe popping back to Hemp Openspace. I think I'm really excited about this, and I'm really feeling like it can be a new opportunity for people in the industry to again to have these conversations and to be able to find connect with people that help them with solutions, or where they can share solutions that they have. And the other piece about it too that we're excited about is that we're really reaching out internationally.
Yeah.
So this won't just be people from the United States. We're trying to, to encourage people to come from anywhere, so we can have global conversation about, issues that are, maybe someone in Europe has got more experience in, fiber, for example, and people here are trying to learn more about fiber, and they could learn from where fiber's been produced for a lot longer, or things like that. Just opportunities for, for conversations that could be really beneficial. So, I maybe if I could mention again, I'll just say,
please.
hempopenspace.com. And if anyone is interested in attending, we've got this $15 discount right now, and they just need to use the code VoteHemp 1208, and that'll get them the discount. And I hope to see lots of people on there, and I'm really hopeful that we're going to continue that conversation. We're planning to do it again in January, and if there's demand for it, we'll continue it on beyond that.
Okay. And
so I think it's going to be, this has been done in other industries, and I think it's going to be well received. So I'm very, encouraged about it.
Yeah, me too. And I'm curious to see how it works. Will there be like panel discussions? Will there be like big name hemp people that attendees can sort of interface with, or like how is it structured?
So we invite some sort of industry leaders or people that are well known, that have some experience, and in the first hour we'll have sessions where they'll have a topic that they've chosen, and there'll be conversations, and people can go. There'll be different rooms. So like in a normal Zoom, you're all in one spot. Well, there's breakout rooms in Hemp Openspace, and so there'll be a bunch of different topics, and then anybody who's participating can choose the topics that are interested to them. If they go into a room and they're feeling inspired, they can stay there. If they want to check out a different topic, they can just pop out and go over to a different room. So it's a great opportunity. And then of course they're going to be part of the conversation in the second hour. Feedback from the participants will help to determine the topics that we'll have, and then it'll be just an open discussion where everybody gets a chance to be part of it.
All right, cool. Is it recorded? Like if you miss one session, will you be able to go back and listen to that?
I don't think we're doing that. I'm going to double check with the team. We had not talked about that. I think it's really intended to be. It's intended to be there. It's sort of
in the present moment, right?
Yeah. So I don't think we're intending to sort of have a recording of it, but yeah, I don't believe so.
As an audio guy, I always think about the audio.
Yeah, well, that's another thing we can talk about someday. I had a career in music before I got into hemp.
Okay.
And I used to do live sound for bands. So yeah, that's cool. We'll have to talk about that.
Right on.
Good time. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Eric Steenstra, it is just an honor to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining me here on our podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on, Eric. It's great to connect with you, and look forward to talking with you some more.
Well, I think this Hemp Openspace event sounds really intriguing, and I can't wait to check it out. So I hope to see you all there. And remember, there is a discount code on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com, along with a link to the registration page. So, all right, I hope this helps you in your journey to the Hemp Openspace. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online. Get yourself a subscription. Do yourself a favor. All right, until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper. Episode 168 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2021 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, which is part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show is written and recorded, edited and produced by Eric Herlock. And any music you hear throughout the show, as always, is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.